Welcome to the 2 Degrees C Climate Chat Podcast, your weekly guide to what's happening within the climate around the world. My name is Neil Vinnikirk, the Executive Director and a founding member of 2 Degrees C. Along with co-founders Dr. Carsten Schein and Jenny Dissen, we cover issues relating to the climate crisis. So join us as we explore in the 2 Degrees C Climate Chat. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for the 2 Degrees C Climate Chat Podcast. Joining me today, Dr. Carsten Schein. Welcome back. And today's guest is a world champion freediver, a conservationist, and adventurer, Mehgan Heaney-Grier. So Carsten, before we bring Mehgan into the conversation, I wanted to frame this in the ocean sense. And because last week we spoke about the ocean being a carbon sink, and I wanted to expand out on that, the idea of trapping that CO2. Perhaps you can help us understand why higher ocean temperatures are a threat to biodiversity in the oceans.
Of course, I can give you one really critical example right now is the coral reefs. That the corals, most of them have a very narrow tolerance of temperature. So, a small range above which, about 31.5 or so degrees Celsius, they really start to stress out. And when they stress out, they expel their symbiotic algae that's within them, which supplies about 90 to 95% of their nutrition. And if that is prolonged for more than a week or two, first off, the corals start to bleach. That's because it's the algae giving them their color. But they also starve. And if it goes on long enough, they'll starve to death.
And can they regain that zooxanthellae algae at a later date if the temperature is reduced?
Absolutely. If they are still alive, they can recapture those zooxanthellae and recover. But beyond maybe about 2 weeks is the critical threshold.
Joining us today, longtime friend, Mehgan Heaney-Grier. Mehgan, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Good to see you guys.
Nice to see you too. Mehgan, maybe you can introduce yourself to the audience and to the listeners so that they can understand your background.
Absolutely. So my name is Mehgan Heaney-Grier, and I am my watery roots go way back to establishing the first freedive record for the United States for men and women back in 1996. So I am an old school freediver, and that has really been the common thread throughout my whole eclectic water career. I'm a television personality. I've done a lot of executive production and on-camera work, and also stunt diving for television and films. But through it all, I am a longtime conservationist and an imperfect conservationist, which is my new project that I have going on right now called The Imperfect Conservationist. And I just kind of have tied all of these things together. And, I fight for the ocean, speak up for the ocean, and try and use all my superpowers and skill set, bringing that together to really help raise awareness about the issues going on underwater, and most importantly, what we can actually do about it as individuals.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're lucky to have you, Mehgan. Thank you so much. We know that you're such a dynamic person. I mean, you've even taken Jacques Mayol diving. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Jacques Mayol was a good dear friend of mine, and also a mentor early on in my freediving career. And for any listeners that aren't familiar with Jacques Mayol, he really is the father of freediving in many ways. And he's also he was the first person to go past 100 meters, which prior to that, when freediving, the doctor said it wasn't possible. And so he really was a trailblazer in that way. And also, he's the fiery Frenchman that the what's his name, Luc Besson did. So his life was the inspiration for the Big Blue. by Luc
Very good.
Besson.
Yeah, one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, it's very cool. But yeah, Jacques Mayol, and he's missed dearly. He's been gone many years now, but he's an amazing person and amazing freediver.
So after you set up the world champion records, you went back to school and you studied ecology and evolutionary biology. Do you think that being in the water has brought you closer to nature, and how's that prompted you to live your life?
Yes. So the short answer is absolutely, being in the water has brought me closer to nature. That is where I tap in, where I connect to, excuse me, it's where I connect to everything that is bigger. It's where you can really get that expanse of being part of the bigger system. And it's really, for me, being underwater, it's like a spiritual experience, first of all. And it's also where you get to really feel big and small at the same time, which is just this really cool energy to tap into. You're down there, like my favorite free dives are down there sitting on the bottom and just looking up at that expanse of just this giant fishbowl of water weighing down on you, and you can really see how small you are in the bigger picture. But then also seeing the impact underwater that we have had as humans, and seeing things change over time, and all of those changes, it really drives home the idea of how impactful we are as well. So you get to be big and small at the same time and really, really soak that in. And you come out of the water then with a responsibility to share what you've seen. And I think us as divers, especially, like, we have such a unique platform to be underwater and see that and then bring it back. So we're uniquely positioned to be stewards of the ocean. And then I totally forgot the second part of your question, Neil. What was the second part?
How has that prompted you to live your life?
So really my experience underwater, and then when I went back to school and got a better understanding of ecology and how the systems all work together and how we fit into those systems and the impacts that we can have, all of these things together, from the background and my education and, the work that I do in conservation and speaking up and out for the ocean. And it's all influenced how I live my life, to the highest limit. I mean, I should say to the highest level, because everything I do comes back to that. My company is MHG Ocean Impact. And although I'm very diverse and I do a lot of, work on land, I live in Colorado now, so I'm landlocked, and I get back to the ocean as much as I can. And I've done expeditions that are land-based mixed with water. Like, I have all that, but it all comes back for me to the impact on the ocean and making that a positive impact. And so
Right.
For me, it's influenced every part of my life, from, work, play, being a mom, everything.
Coming up next.
Mehgan, I'm curious, how has your ocean journey guided your understanding of climate change and its effects in the oceans?
When we return to the 2 Degrees C Climate Chat. Described barefoot luxury, the casually sophisticated Southern Cross Club is Little Cayman's original resort. This hidden gem is as unique and vibrant as the island it inhabits. A true island treasure, it is the perfect place to dive, fish, and relax. Its 14 beachfront bungalows are situated on 900 feet of white sand, only minutes from the world-class diving found only in Little Cayman. Visit www.southerncrossclub.com to book your escape to tranquility.
Hi, I'm Adrienne with Quest Dive Adventures, and you're listening to the 2 Degrees C Climate Chat podcast.
Mehgan, I'm curious, how has your ocean journey guided your understanding of climate change and its effects in the oceans?
Yeah. So, that's a good question. My time underwater has has really just been, it has been a journey, and it's been an eye-opening one, to the extent that I've witnessed the changes over my whole lifetime. So I moved down to the Florida Keys when I was about 11 years old. Took to the water right away, spent, every waking minute that I wasn't either doing chores or homework underwater or on the water or whatever. And since then, I've seen these gradual changes, and I wouldn't have, especially at that young age, and even throughout my teens and early 20s, I wouldn't have attributed those changes to climate change. It was just, I could see our human impact, and I didn't like a lot of it. There were different species that I just wasn't seeing as often, and I'd see increasing amounts of, pollution and just trash, and then increasingly it became plastic pollution more than anything else, and all of that. And I mean, it's interesting, you guys. I remember back, because I grew up spearfishing down there. And really now I don't take anything to speak of from the ocean, because I just prefer to see it, maybe film it and experience it. But I'd rather, I've stopped doing that. But back then I used to spearfish, and, we used to look out in the blue water for floating trash, for sea trash, because it was amazing out in the blue water that all the little fish would come around it, and then the bigger pelagic fish and all of that. So it created, in this vast blue, it would create this little, plastic ecosystem, if you would. So in that sense, I was just like, oh, it's just part of, you'd occasionally see something out there, but it wasn't super common. And now it's very, rare that you would ever come back from a dive or come back from a trip out in the boat and not see a lot of trash. And so all of these, things over time, I saw changing, and underwater and on the surface. But the really, the biggest impact on my life, of where where it's sunk in, that, wow, this is climate change, and these are some huge changes that I'm seeing underwater, happened actually just a couple years ago, with seeing it through my son's eyes. And so he was at the age, he's just about 8. So he was probably about 5 at the time. And he was, that's such a great age. He's just soaking it in, and he's at a level where he can really understand a lot of what's going on and what I'm telling him, and all of that, in the nature and science ecosystem type of way, And so he was asking a lot of great questions, and we'd be out snorkeling, and he'd be, snorkel speaking to me like, oh, Mom, it's so pretty. It's so pretty. And I realized how, I would agree with him. Yeah, it's so pretty. And every single time I recognized, I would stick my head out of the water, take my snorkel out of my mouth, and I was saying, well, yeah, but when Mommy was a little girl, it was like this. And, oh, look at this, Mom, it's so pretty. Yes, it is. But when Mommy was a little girl, buddy, this is what it was like. I was explaining what live rock was to him, and I was showing him the one anemone out in the whole flats that we could find, and I'd say, this used to be covered with anemone, and there was live rock and sponges and little angelfish and all this stuff. And, now we're seeing there's still life, right? It's just very different life. And it's in many senses, a lot of the brown and green algae has taken over. And so there's still things growing there, but then that's attracting different species of fish. So maybe it's just the little gray snappers, or just the, something like that. And it really, that has had the biggest impact on me, where I saw clear as day through his eyes, because I was explaining the stark difference. What he was seeing and seeing is beautiful, bless his heart. It was amazing. I love showing him all these different places that I've been able to take him underwater. But when I was comparing what his impression of what he's seeing right now, and then comparing that with what I grew up seeing down there, it was such a stark difference. And it just was one of those aha moments that just hit me in the forehead. And I was like, wow, my home reef is so devastated. I mean, I've cried underwater many times, and it has a huge impact. And I think it's really, I want to bring that around positive, because I think that this really is a positive story. So, and then I'll wrap up with that. And you guys, if you have any more questions or whatever, but So not wrapping up, but you know what I mean? I want to bring that back around positive, but because that's how I roll. But I think that this awareness that we have, this growing awareness that we collectively have around climate change is now, right? Like this is such an incredible time to be alive and to be working in the field of conservation and to be able to understand things in the way that we do right now, which previously, 10, 20 years ago, we didn't understand it in these terms, at least not as widely. And so what's so cool right now is we have the understanding, we have an incredible amount of technology, and it's growing, of course, as you guys know, far better than me. And also we have this audience that's being impacted and that's aware of how these things collectively we all are becoming so aware about how everything is so interconnected, so that our trash here in Colorado absolutely impacts the coastline, and what we do here impacts other countries and vice versa, like not just in a political sense or whatever, but in this deep biologically connected way running through the blue veins of our planet, and I think that's so amazing. And that was how everything connected for me with like where we've been and what I saw growing up, where we are right now when I was explaining this stark difference of what we're seeing underwater to my little boy, and then recognizing like, man, we're all getting this.
Yeah.
We are on board, and this is the time that we strike when the iron's hot and inform everybody with what we can do, what I can do, what you can do, like individually, Right. So I think it's a pretty incredible time to be involved in these things that we care so deeply about. And I think it's going places.
And, along that same vein of interconnectedness, I mean, you've been part of the Snake Island team on the Discovery Channel, and you've traveled to some unique remote places to go diving and such. What sort of changes have you seen in those places that are, vastly removed from most human contact?
Yeah, well, most everywhere that I've traveled around the world and places I've dove or explored, I will find trash. I will find especially plastic trash. It floats really well. It blows on the breeze, depending on what, type we're talking about. And yeah, I mean, I was on Snake Island, which, does not get foot traffic at all. You're not supposed to be on there. So we were working with the Brazilian government to even be there. And there are some biologists and stuff that go there that are studying the snakes, but obviously it's not really, this is trash that's floating up onto the shoreline. And I made kind of I was calling it a snake baffle when we were setting up our hammocks out of the plastic bottles I'd been jamming into my backpack. And I like cut all these little splayed edges and put the line through the neck of the bottle. It's like hoping to keep the snakes out of my hammock for the night. But so in that sense, it came in handy. I was trying to make, how does the saying go? Make a silk purse out of a sow's ear or whatever. Well, that's not very environmentally friendly. Let's make lemonade out of lemons. There we go.
Sustainable lemons.
Yeah, sustainably harvested lemons. Yes. Anyway, oh man, we could take that so far. But yeah, everywhere that I've been, I have seen, our plastic footprint, if you will, and that's not an uncommon experience. I think all of us divers, I carry a mesh bag with me specifically on every single dive, specifically for just picking up trash. And so, and I usually free dive, I would say 9 times out of 10, I free dive. And so now both, whenever I go free diving, whether it's with just a buddy or with my most favorite dive buddy, my son, we always bring a bag and we're collecting stuff on the surface all the way down to the bottom. I mean, I have found this one time I saw this fish like doing this really weird thing on the bottom, and I couldn't tell what was going on. And then I swam down and it had swam into a plastic bag, like a Ziploc type bag that I couldn't see the rest of it, and it was down on the bottom and was in there. It was still alive. So I got the little fish out and collected the bag up and stuff. So that's like a happy story, but yeah, it's a bummer. I mean, that our impact is seen everywhere. On that note, though, I think it's really important to point out that we got here by individual decisions that came together for the collective impact, whether it was in voting, or whether it was in our consumer choices, but our on so many levels. This is, obviously it's a complicated situation, but on so many levels, we got to where we are with climate change, with our plastic pollution, with all of the other impacts that we have based off of our individual decisions that come together like drops in a bucket and make that impact. I mean, the ocean is made up of these drops, right? And it's vast. And those are like our decisions that we make individually. They come together and they're powerful as hell. And that is what I always am striving for, to harness from the individual and then bringing the collective together. And I think, and like what is happening with 2 degrees C and all of that, it's bringing these individual pieces together for the collective, knockout.
You're listening to a conversation about climate innovation. Coming up, yeah, you bring me to the next point, actually, because, Mehgan, you're kind of unique in the fact that you've traveled to so many unique places, as Carson referenced before, when you were filming Snake Island and such. I mean, going to such far-flung destinations that are truly unique, you must have seen some impacts of change. Maybe you can tell us a bit about those. That's up next when 2 Degrees C Climate Chat continues. Blue Ocean Art is the premier collective of marine artists and a proud partner of 2 Degrees C. From some of the world's most renowned underwater photographers to painters, sculptors, and multimedia artists from around the world, Blue Ocean Art's large collection features moving imagery showcasing the beauty of the world's oceans. Our artists' passion to capture the moments and special places in our oceans affords the rest of us a glimpse into that mystical realm that makes up so much of our planet and has a deep impact on all of us, yet we know so little about. Our shared interest in protecting the environment means we look forward to using the leaf climate sensor on our projects and trips as soon as they're able to reach the critical next stage of product development. Visit www.blueoceanart.com to see their selection of fine art prints and decorative products to bring the beauty of the world's coral reefs and underwater environments into your space. Listeners of the 2 Degrees C Climate Chat podcast can exclusively take 25% off with the code 2degreesc at checkout. So Carson, how might climate changes over land affect our oceans?
So following on a little bit of what Mehgan mentioned in terms of, that something in Colorado can affect something in the ocean. The changes that we're seeing over land as a result of climate change have a, huge and profound effect on the ocean. For example, changes in the atmospheric circulation are bringing rain to places that didn't used to have as much rain as they are getting now. Heavier, more extreme precipitation. And if you have that in a place, for example, along the coast that didn't normally get a lot of rainfall, there's a lot of trash on the ground, a lot of those plastics, and it's just sitting there on the ground waiting to be mobilized by that heavy rain. So you start getting heavy rains and that stuff washes right into the ocean. That's just been sitting there waiting for years in some cases.
And yeah, you bring me to the next point, actually, because, Mehgan, you're kind of unique in the fact that you've traveled to so many unique places, as Carson referenced before, when you were filming Snake Island and such. I mean, going to such far-flung destinations that are truly unique, you must have seen some impacts of change. Maybe you can tell us a bit about those.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's probably not going to be unlike what most have seen if you've traveled and just taken in your surroundings, where, a lot, and even here in the United States, I mean, I've traveled extensively on road trips. I've been a big road tripper for years and would usually drive between, Florida and Colorado And so everywhere from here and as far as, Stake Island and different places that are very remote, the biggest thing that I see is the plastic trash, and just, you could see scars on the land where, whether it's agriculture or clearing for, agriculture in general, but like whether it's that or clearing, just for the meat industry or whatever it is. And so there's evidence everywhere of our impact, and you can take that in. And the thing that gets me about it, and thinking about climate change as the big picture, is that it's incredibly overwhelming. And I have suffered from that big time, just working in the field of conservation, where it can be so overwhelming that it can become paralyzing, because I feel so disempowered about what I can actually do as an individual and all of that when I'm looking at the macro, this big wide picture of it all. And so what I do, and even when I travel, this is what I do as well, is I funnel that down into specific action items I can do right now to lighten my individual impact.
And I'm assuming that's what's prompted this next segment of your life, which is the Imperfect Conservationist.
Right. Yeah. So the Imperfect Conservationist is a pilot web series, and I have 7 episodes coming out in this first run, and it is really focused on that. It's built around conservation empowerment. So this is just getting an understanding of what and how you can do, like how and what you can do right now to make a positive impact on the world around you. And, I think we often hear so much about hope, and like, oh, there's still hope, and there's still, we haven't reached that point of no return yet, and we have all this information and technology, and we can make a difference. But hope is this, in how I'm looking at it, hope is kind of this thing right here, which is a vital ingredient, but it's just hovering there. And so conservation empowerment is taking this hope and turning it into action. So what can I do? I've been to so many lectures and talks, and now Zoom, webinars and all of this stuff on the big picture. And it's incredibly important. I don't want to discredit that at all. It's so important to have an understanding of what the problem is, but we have to move past that and switch our focus from the problem then to the solution, which most, that are in this field do a good job of pivoting there. It's like, okay, well, and here's what you can do. But often what I find in that scenario is there's still it's still really big action items, like it's kind of abstract, and it's left, like it's either, well, buy a new car and you'll have less of an impact. Well, everybody can't buy a new car. And then what do we do with the old ones? And there's layers of complication. Or it could be something along the lines of, well, write letters to your senator, also really important. But so often we need something that's tangible right in front of us to get that inspiration to keep acting, right? So that's really what the Imperfect Conservationist is all about. It's these bite-sized action items that are, 3 things I always work in there whenever I'm considering making a change is making it easy, money saving, and impactful. I want to, make sure I can do it, that it's easy enough to bake into my busy life as a single mom and doing everything else that I'm doing. And I need to have it easy so I can keep doing it. And having it money saving and affordable, especially right now with this pandemic upon us. Most everybody's impacted financially, and it's tough times, right? So that's always important, to just be able to save your money and do something else you want to do. But then also the impact is what I love about these little bite-sized things that we can each do, is that when they are so easy, they become the backdrop, just kind of like a lifestyle. You forget you're doing them until you inspire somebody else. And that is the most incredible inspiration that comes back to you, because that's proof positive about your direct impact that you have on the world right now, today. Because now somebody that just saw you do this action, whatever it is, whatever this little habit change is, and each episode has one different thing that you can do. And often this is built off of just my own experience where I've been doing this just because it was actually just making me feel more empowered. Like I have some control over, my world around me, and I'm doing something good. And then it's inspired somebody else, and then they start doing it. And that's how your actions, especially the good stuff, starts rippling out and taking on a life of its own. It becomes this great multiplier. And that's how we build this, this force of imperfect conservationists, just doing everything we can, the best we can right now. And I think that that's incredibly empowering. It has been for me. And that's what the series is all about, is to put that in everybody's pocket.
I'll just say, your podcast really embodies, Gandhi's saying of, what you do may seem insignificant, but it's most important that you do it.
Right.
And, I learned something from it that I've been using. And that was this car bagging idea from one of your early episodes, that if you've forgotten your reusable shopping bag in the car, which I always do,
we all do.
every single time,
even when you care,
just throw your stuff back in the cart and bag it at the car. I love that idea. I've used it 2 or 3 times already.
Awesome. Yeah. I love to hear that. Seriously, like that for me is that's so incredibly inspiring for me to keep going and keep.
And I was like, why didn't I ever think of this?
Right. Right. There's just some of these like really simple things that are, more often than not born out of just necessity, where it's like, oh God, okay, I forgot my bags again. And I care. I really care. I don't want to keep bringing these awful things home, just be out of principle of it, if nothing else, and and so it was just born out of that. And there's so many little tweaks that I've made in my life and that I learned from other people. And I love getting the engagement and hearing stories like that. And at the end of every episode too, I encourage people to let me know if you've used this, or if you try something else, or if you want me to cover something else you're struggling with on a future episode, and so anyway, this is the this web series really is the voice to my life's work in many ways. This is my career. This is my, everything I've always been working toward, which is just this collective experience of conservation empowerment, of being able to, serve others and serve the ocean, and really try to bring ideas together and keep that creativity and that empowerment coming, together through the Imperfect Conservationist. So anyway, I love for people to reach out, and I love for people to comment and give me ideas if there's, if there's anything they're struggling with. And it's just, it's a cool platform. I hadn't really branched out into the YouTube platform before, which is where people can find the series. If you just go in and type to YouTube and type in the Imperfect Conservationist,
I've left you a comment, so all good.
Oh, thank you.
The roaming fool.
Yay. But yeah, it's really wonderful. And I'm excited to keep this going. So I'm working really hard to promote and build it. And I appreciate everybody and anybody who enjoys it as well to support just by sharing and liking and subscribing and all that stuff. It helps hugely building all the numbers in the beginning. And I would love to just create, I would love to just keep this going and have this as a conservation resource that can spread far and wide.
Well, I think that, we all thank you for your efforts. It's really inspiring from our point of view to see somebody who's actioning their beliefs in the manner that you have over the last, I don't know how many years you've been busy, but it's been a long time since I've heard your name. And I for one, have followed many of the paths that you have, and can truly say that it is certainly inspiring. And we thank you for those efforts. And we wish you all of the best with the Imperfect Conservationist. And as Mehgan said before, if you'd like to follow it through YouTube at Imperfect Conservationist or through MehganHeaney-Grier.com, we encourage you to go sign up and follow along with this journey. Thanks
Absolutely.
So much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. We can tackle this together, guys.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We hope so.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the 2 Degrees C Climate Chat. If you have a question you would like answered, a topic for discussion, or would like to be a guest on the show, please leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your stories and climate journeys, and if you like what you've heard today, please like, subscribe, and comment wherever you hear your podcasts. Next week, we'll be interviewing Peter Hillenbrand from the Central Caribbean Marine Institute, so be sure to check back in then, or find out more about the stories you just heard by visiting our blog at 2degreesc.org and connect to others like you via our social media. We'd love to hear your stories and climate journeys, and if you like what you've heard today, please like, subscribe, and comment wherever you hear your podcasts. Thank you to our sponsors and partners without which this podcast is not possible, with special thanks to Seren Media for producing today's episode. To find out more about our partners, please visit our website, and if you'd like to become a sponsor or partner, please email us at podcast@2degreesc.org.